picture's worth 1,000 words, right? We don't read 1,000 words anymore. We watch a picture. So if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000 pictures, right? And I cannot overstress that when somebody's looking through, we will click on videos quicker than we will look on pictures because there's a movement and there's an interaction, right? So something to kind of keep in mind when you're trying to present yourself to the world again, because part of what I'm going to talk about is just that. All of you, first and foremost, congratulations to all of you to starting your transition into your next chapter of life. It will arguably be one of the hardest things that you will ever do. And at the same time, what you're really doing is moving out of your parents' basement, right? That's what all transition is. For all the years that you've served, we've been told where to be, what to wear, what to eat, what we're going to do. We've essentially still been in our parents' basement, and now you're moving out, right? So it's a whole big world again, and that becomes really challenging. So what I want to talk about today is a few things that I've learned and that I work um, with other transitioners and what kind of brought me to where I'm at. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story. Now, I'm sure you've heard 100 stories at this point of transitions. What I would tell you is keep listening to them. Find more of them. There's never enough. And what you're looking for in stories is not your roadmap. It's not your story from somebody else. What you're listening for are things that are similar to your situations and what can you learn from them, not what can you copy from them, what can you learn from them? And here's the other thing I would tell you. For every success story that you hear, find a failure story. Here's the scary part. There's more failure stories than there are success stories in transition. And by failure, I don't mean immediate failure. It could be something that takes a little time to settle in. And by failure, what I mean is those that struggle to find either a job that they like, job that they want to keep, where do they want to live. There's so many variables in transition. You listen to the stories of those that are struggling for two reasons. One, you will hear something that'll either trigger a thought to be like, oh, I need to avoid that, or that's a good point. I didn't consider that. But you're also going to help them as well. Those with struggle stories, it helps them, the veterans and the transitioners, to talk about that as well, right? So I'm going to share my story, and it's not as a roadmap. I'm here to tell you I'm definitely not a roadmap, not even a stretch of imagination. I'm not even a back road you want to follow with your lights on, right? It just gets a little scary sometimes. But as Tyler mentioned, I joined when I was young. I was 17. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. Wanted to see what the great big world looked like, so I joined the Army for 2 years. Got lost somewhere and retired at 24. During that time, I joined as a mechanic. I was a 63 Bravo back in the day for everybody in here. That's a lightweight vehicle mechanic. And about in between my first and second deployment to Iraq, I realized how much I enjoyed the logistics of the maintenance that I was working on. Didn't, necessarily enjoy the long hours, but I love the logistics. So I became a warrant officer about 7 or 8 years in, and then spent the rest of my time in the Army as such and retired as a CW4 here in Alaska. If you can't tell, Lean, Alaska, right? There's a reason for the title. Um, when I got out, I didn't get out because I was tired of the Army. I got out because I loved Alaska. My family loved Alaska, and Branch was like, hey, we want to send you to Fort Polk. So I told my family, and that's in Louisiana for anybody unaware. So I told my family they wanted to go to Louisiana, and my family said, no, no, they want you to go to Louisiana. We're staying in Alaska. So it told me my family was ready to transition, which meant more to me than making CW5, which was on the horizon for me. The reason that's important is when I transitioned to a warrant officer, I was a mechanic, but I was airborne, so I lived in a light infantry community, and that's all that I did was light infantry. If it wasn't 82nd or 173rd or 425 or anything with an airplane to jump out of, that was my life. And I had a battalion commander who was really, really good as an infantryman. It was phenomenal. And we saw eye to eye on a lot of things, but one thing that we didn't was where to place blame. All right. And that's going to lead me to what we're going to talk about today. Everything that happened in there, especially from a logistics perspective, what I would hear was Lieutenant so-and-so didn't get this done. Sergeant so-and-so dropped the ball, whatever it is. And I kept going back and I'm like, but it's not the lieutenant. It's not your NCOs. Like, these are good people. They're good at what they do. There is something uncontrollable right now that is causing our issues. Like, we don't control DLA. We don't control AMC. So I get introduced to process improvement by one of my mentors at the time, Lean Six Sigma. And he said, you're really going to want to learn this technique. It'll help you have a different way of communicating from a person perspective, or to the person from a process perspective, make adjustments, stop blaming people, start blaming the process, and ask the people why the process failed them, right? Kind of a change of trajectory there in conversation. So I learned. I became a black belt in Lean Six Sigma, ultimately became a master black belt as I got time to retire. And much like anybody else, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. So when I retired, I took on traditional jobs. I was a W-2 employee for one company. I was a contractor back for the Army, did a bunch of various things that really weren't scratching my itch. They weren't really, satisfying that passion. And I started Lean Alaska as a side hustle. But the reason I was able to start Lean Alaska as a side hustle as consulting was because all the experience that I gained doing process improvement while I was in the Army. Some of it was experience that I did deliberately, some of it was indirect experience. But what was interesting was Lean Six Sigma taught me a different way to communicate to my hiring managers, to my employees, and then ultimately my clients. So instead of trying to translate effort to them, I was able to translate results. If you try to explain, like let's say you're a logistician, right, and you're used to moving multimodal shipments across the world. If you go to let me come back to a different, a little more broad topic. If you go to a company and say, you know what, I was in an organization of 3,000 people and I was in charge of 1,000 of them. I was responsible for $3.2 million budget of hand receipts and equipment that we maintained. That order of magnitude might be really, really hard for one of your new employers to swallow. What if their company only has 1,000 people? What if it's only evaluated at $1.2 million? Simply by working at a brigade level and you trying to translate effort in terms of quantifying magnitudes, you're going to look like you're overqualified for what they're doing. But if you learn how to translate results, it's not about how many people I was in charge of, it was what you accomplished with those people. It's not about how much money you say or how much money you were responsible for, it was how much money you saved or how you managed the budgets that were in there. Very different perspective. When you translate results, they can understand that because results are based on percentages and percentages are scalable, right? Just something to think about when you're in there. So that's kind of what I took away. So Lean Alaska, I was able to take things that I accomplished over my military career and translate that into that side hustle of consulting, which ultimately grew into training, which grew into a business. And now here I am 6 years later running Lean Alaska, primarily doing training and consulting, more training and certification, I would say, for the services, but about 30% of my time is still consulting with businesses all over the world, largely because it keeps everything relevant, right? And it continues to grow my expertise in this field. But it all started because I had to understand something called the paper ceiling. Anybody in here heard of the paper ceiling before? Or is that a new term for everybody? Right? All of you are going to run into the paper ceiling, right? So the paper ceiling is kind of that thing, that limit, that edge that keeps us from progressing in the civilian world. Much like it would in the military. But in the military, we have all these things. They send you to school. You want to get promoted, go to school. You want to, in order to get promoted, go to a specific PME. You want to set yourself apart, do something different, get an ASI, right? The paper ceiling in the military exists, but the military is designed to move you through the paper ceiling deliberately. But again, parents' basement, they're not telling you about that. It's just a requirement. On the outside, it's all your responsibility. And you run into the paper ceiling a lot. It's either that degree or that credential that limits you from moving up the ladder. Everybody wants to transition making six figures. You won't get that simply by your time in the military. You're going to need to break through the paper ceiling, right? The paper ceiling starts at the bachelor level when you're talking about degree path. Back in the day, about 15 years ago, it used to be masters and PhDs were what set you apart. That's not it anymore. Bachelors are the immediate requirement, though. That's kind of a go no go line in terms of that paper ceiling. It is a requirement to get hired. Beyond that, they start looking at credentials. What are the specific skill sets that you are papered in? And just as important as the credential, who are you credentialed by? Yes, you can go out and buy, a cybersecurity certificate for $50. You can go buy a Lean Six Sigma for $200. You can go buy a PMP for $150. But industry understands that that doesn't demonstrate proficiency. They know who the bodies of knowledge are if they're hiring for that position that they want to see. And what they're looking for is for you to be able to articulate that in an interview. Paper gets you to the interview, you get you past the interview. And that's how you speak to them. It's how you articulate or demonstrate what that credential is. So in terms of credentialing, I want to throw something on here. Forgive me, I'm on one screen right now, so this might get a little disjointed. but I want to share a slide with you. I'm going to leave it up here while I talk to this paper ceiling, right? There we go. When we're talking about credentials, right, and what kind of gets you through, starts easing you through that paper ceiling, there's kind of this tiered effect in transition, right? Some of you have probably a very, very specific focus on what you want to do in your next career, and that is phenomenal. It's good to have that. You don't want to discount or discredit other options that are out there, but at least it's good to have some focus. Some of you may not, and you're wanting to see what the world has to offer. And that, again, is not a bad place to be. There are no wrong answers, right? There are no wrong answers into what you want to do. So when you look to that transition, the first thing you want to cover is that top tier, which is that super broad spectrum, that degree or those credentialing skills that cover all the industries. Doesn't matter what you do now or what you want to try, that credential transcends all of those, like Lean Six Sigma, like change management. These things are universal. Process is a process, people are people. Every organization has them, and every organization works through them. So certification or credentials in those areas become very universal. The tier down would be, you know what, I want to be credentialed in something broad spectrum, but has a little bit of a focus. This is where project management and agile and Scrum start coming into play. And then you have that final tier, which says, you know what, I want to get in the cybersecurity field. Great, we need cybersecurity. I want to be a pilot. Great, probably need a pilot's license, right? But if you're looking broad spectrum, how do I start preparing myself for anything? This Venn diagram that you see on your screen, hopefully you can see it. These are the 3 Ps of transition, right? The 3 Ps that anything and everything falls into when you're transitioning. It's people, it's process, it's project. Every single organization has all 3 of those areas: people, project, process. And if you want to break through their paper ceiling, meaning you want to be able to move up that ladder, continue to grow in terms of salary increase, responsibility, just like we got promoted in the military, these are the areas you want your credentials in, right? Because they are the ones that also lead to those senior manager positions, senior operation or manager positions, senior logisticians, whatever it is, those upper level managements. People, project, process, right? So if you're looking, your process, that's your Lean Six Sigma. Lean Six Sigma Black Belt is the most predominant certification in that sphere of the process. And again, it focuses on what's wrong with the process, not what's wrong with the people. Very different approach. If you're familiar with the Toyota Way or Toyota production manufacturing, that is very lean. If you've done anything in quality management, in risk identification, so many things we do on a regular basis in the military, it is all based in Six Sigma, which is part of the Lean Six Sigma model, right? But you are a subject matter expert in process improvement, not just simply, a specific process. That covers your process silo, if you will. Your change management, huge. And most of you, and this is what's great, the fact that you have as many years in that you have now, whether it's 5 or 50 or 15 or 20 or whatever it is, there's not going to be 50, that's a little bit much, right? But all of you have some experience in change management. May not be as refined as the change management philosophy and methodologies, but you have experience in that. It's not a far stretch to understand that credential, but it focuses on the people, right? Just by show of thumb or hams, how many agree that change is hard? People don't like change. Organizations are change, right? And we agree, right? People don't like change. If people don't like change, we ask yourself this question. The next person that says, we don't like change. Do they like a new car? Do they like a new phone? Do they like new clothes? Do they go out and try new foods? Change isn't typically the problem here, right? It's the journey to the change. And that's where change management comes into play. It says, if you want to make an adjustment in an organization, you have to understand how to identify where the resistance is at. Every organization has 3 layers: leadership, management, and employees, right? Or doers or service members or wherever the worker level is, right? Management, leaders, and your worker level. Every one of them is going to meet with some kind of a resistance, and change management is a certification focused on identifying where does resistance land with the leadership, with the management, with the workers, and how do we address that? How do we remove that resistance so we can move forward in improving a process or managing a project, whatever it is? It's the people side of change. In your project silo, this is the one that probably has the most certifications. You have project management professional, you have agile certified professional, you have Scrum, you have a bunch of different techniques in there. And their focus is framework. How do I manage my team through something? If it's predictive and I'm building skyscrapers, great, we'll use PMP. If it's software related or very iterative, great, we'll use Agile and Scrum. But when you look at all three of these together, you're looking at the framework of a project, you're looking at the methodology of changing a process, and you're looking at the changing of the people's resistance levels. All three of these, right? Any one of these by themselves will help move you through that paper ceiling. But when you start compounding these, now I have something in process and project, something in people and process, right? You start that combat multiplying of your skill sets, and it starts again moving you through that paper ceiling, right? Feel like I kind of just got into the role right there, but cannot explain how much that you will run into that. And credentialing aligned with your degrees, that's what the paper ceiling is all about. It says if you want to move up or move through an organization, you have to continue to educate, to grow, to learn. Again, just like the military. One quick example, and then I'm gonna move past this for a minute. I'm trying to make sure I'm cognizant of the time. And this is not the only example, but the one that I'll give. So in my just graduated class, so as I mentioned, Lean Alaska's primary focus, we certify in Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, we certify in change management, we certify in Scrum. And I'm going to show you some examples of what students have done having left our courses. And by students, I do mean transitioners, service members. We had a sergeant major in a course that just graduated a couple of weeks ago. Now he's been out probably for, I'd say 8 to 10 years. And he didn't intend, like he was an infantryman while he was in, and he didn't really intend to get into lean. It just kind of happened. It was more like quality management when he started working with Mack trucks, and then he started working for an aerospace company, and he kind of moved around in the manufacturing space. And the company that he was working for, and he is in just outside of Detroit in Michigan. He was ready to move past that company because he'd been working in a position for quite some time as a green belt. He was being paid as a Lean Six Sigma green belt in quality management. He was functioning well above what that pay was. And the company made it very clear to him. They were like, look, you're doing the work, but you are not credentialed as a black belt, right? We want to be able to pay you. We have no problem increasing your salary. But by the way our structure works, if you are not credentialed, you don't move up, right? Just again, think about the military. You can only go so far before they'll tell you you can't get promoted till you attend your PME. It's the same principle. So he came to the course to get that. And I mean, the day that he graduated that black belt, immediate raise inside of the organization. Immediate. And it was a significant raise. And it was just that moment, like, that's the paper ceiling, only held back by a piece of paper. And I'm going to be honest, when he was in the class, yeah, he was learning, but it was more of him and I sharing experiences than it was me teaching him how to be a black belt. He already knew. He already knew. He just wasn't being paid because he was missing a piece of paper, right? So I can't overstate how those credentials will play into your job search, into your, not even just your hire, but your growth. Hiring is the first step. Growing past that position while you're there, that's what helps. So a lot of transitioners that I talk to, they'll get into a position and they're very happy with the position. But once they find out that they can't grow in the position, it starts to get a little dry, right? Think about your military experience. You have moved about every 3 to 5 years or less for however many years that you've served, right? We don't like change, but change is the world that we live in, right? So to find a job when you get out where there's no change for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, that doesn't serve us well. It doesn't do well for how we have been accustomed to living for so long. So let me show you, these are slides that we go through in a different format, but I wanted to try something a little different with this group. So why does it matter? I want to talk about Lean Six Sigma, change management, Scrum, project management. I want to focus in on those a little bit. Why does it matter? As I mentioned earlier, these courses, these credentials, this paper ceiling, it's universal. It doesn't matter what industry, it still exists. With process improvement specifically, you can see how universal that is through manufacturing, financial services, military, healthcare. This is just what I could fit on the slide, right? But it's got some key uses that are in there. There was oh God, what was it? I can't remember who I was watching, but somebody told me one time, when you're like, how do I become recognized? How do I stand out amongst a crowd when I'm trying to be seen? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, AJ's video, just as Tyler said it, 1 out of 10 put a video on there. That's standing out amongst a crowd, right? Do something so important that you can't be ignored. Offer something so important that it can't be ignored. That's how you start gaining attention. When you start showing up, not only with a credential, right, to your name, but understanding how the credential works, you will stand out amongst a crowd. Simply saying I'm certified, all that says is you passed an exam. Saying that you understand how that certification applies to the business world, that's what sets you apart, right? And that's where credentialing comes in. Degrees are great, but degrees are very broad spectrum, right? They have a background, they have a focus, but again, it's still very broad spectrum compared to credentials. And that's why they've become so important over the last 10 years. You're being hired to do a specific thing, right? The bachelor is just demonstrating your commitment to education over a period of time, and then we're able to create these baselines of understanding. But again, the credentials, these are why it matters. These are how you use those, and it's how you articulate that use to the hiring managers. Some of our students, kind of bringing this back a little bit. We've trained about 2,000 plus, I think, in the last 4 or 5 years. We've certified a little over 2,000 transitioners. And with Lean Alaska, the thing that I wanted to create was a community. I think I probably spend as much time helping people through transition, look for jobs, understand their resumes, translate their experiences into those results as I do training. So we have a very tight community with all of those. I still talk to anybody that's still reached out because we have a very lifetime access course, and I'll cover that here in a little bit. But these were just 6 of the stories. We've had about 70 or 80 transitioners that have got out of the military, transitioned, started working jobs, and called back just to simply say, hey, wanted to let you know where I'm working now. And again, this is 6 out of a field of them. We would have slide after slide. But start looking at those median salary, or start looking at those salaries that are in there. With credentials, it's where you start setting yourself up for those 6-figure salaries, right? Because you're demonstrating experience. And when you link that to the results you've gained in the military, you have the option to start pulling in these kind of salaries. Regional manager at 170. This guy was an ammo warrant, right? Started off in the Air Force, switched over to become a warrant officer in the Army as an ammunition technician, and then got hired into a solar company to do process improvement, and now works the whole Southeast region for Nextera. Same thing with our distribution manager. This was a post-command captain, 5 or 6 years in, was in an interview with McMaster Carr down in Florida or Georgia, or wherever that hub is down there. Went for a supply management position, got hired on to do process improvement because they had a conversation about supply chain management as it related to their loading dock, and said, hey, as a supply chain manager, you're going to be in charge of the loading dock. Here's an issue you are having. What would you do? So he went back into his process improvement things, talking about root cause analysis, process mapping, collect the data to understand efficiency cycles and things like that. And it just kind of, he said the interview switched from an interview to a conversation about what he was going to accomplish. Pulled him in at 150. We have a captain that's in a NASA SkillBridge now, cybersecurity commander out of Virginia. And he's doing process improvement, change management, SkillBridge for NASA, right? The fact that he's cybersecurity just amplified why they wanted him in there. So the stories, they go on forever, right? They go on forever on what you can do with the credentials. But as I mentioned earlier, for all of these success stories, there are 2 to 3 times as many stories from somebody transitioning that said, you know what? I can't find it yet. I haven't found the thing that I want or something that accepts me. One story that I'll share, and this one still kind of hurts me to my heart a little bit. Had a very, very good friend of mine. I was a W-4 as we were transitioning. He was a W-3. We worked together multiple times throughout our career, and I kept urging him, finish your degree, get your credentials, finish those things before we get out, man. It's not going to be easy. But he was one of these guys that was so focused on the military and the mission that he could never see past that, right? And it's not hard to get sucked into that cycle. So when we transitioned, we were both again in the same field looking for positions. I had a little more success than he did, but every time he would come back to it, like, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, you know what? Honestly, he was probably a better mechanic than I was. He was a phenomenal warrant officer. I mean, this was just a great human being, and I couldn't figure out why I was getting callbacks at interviews and he was not. So we started talking more and more after transition, and what he told me was his feedback. He started sending me the emails that he was getting in feedback, and it says, "Hey, we love you. We love your personality. However, you don't have a bachelor's degree, and that's a prerequisite for this position. You don't have this credential. That's a prerequisite for this position," right? We're looking for somebody that is already certified in process improvement or already certified in project management, as opposed to somebody we have to train. It wasn't him. It wasn't his experiences. It was the paper ceiling that he was stuck in, right? So for as many success stories as I can show you, we can have conversations about stories of struggle. I don't want to call them failure, but I will call them stories of struggle. Um, One other note, and then I want to kind of transition to what we offer a little bit, and then I want to give questions because I got about 15 minutes left. Another thing in transition when you're looking, it's about connections, and I think that's what you're in is in your week of connections right here. Resumes are very important, but I will tell you that resumes are not the only thing in your toolkit. You are in your toolkit, and betting on yourself will sometimes outweigh some of the others. Now, don't take that as in, oh, I don't need a resume. No, I absolutely need a resume. You probably need a couple different versions of a resume, depending on who you're talking to, what positions you're looking for. But if you look at this splashboard right here, we don't have to only look for the Fortune 500 companies, right? This company right here, DataCore, that you see, that's an 18-person company that hired somebody at $225,000 to do executive management and process improvement, right? It doesn't have to be the IRSs or the McMaster Cars or the Amazons. Even Nextera is only so big. Propeller, not huge, right? So when we're looking, don't kind of get yourself in the mindset, well, I need a big company that can support a big salary. That's not how it goes, especially with process improvement. With Lean Six Sigma, your purpose for any organization is to make them money that far exceeds what you bring in. I'll give you one more example. Here in Alaska, there's a food manufacturing company close to where I live, and they were starting up. They were a startup, and they had a $3.5 million investment to start up their company that was focused on commercial dehydration of food for sale for hikers and sustainment and survivability. So they had 3.5 million to start up. Before I started working with them, they had talked to chefs, they had talked to equipment managers, all these other things, all the other people, and they tried to sell them. You need all of this equipment. You need an 18-person staff. You need all of this stuff to be successful in your first 12 months. So I got called in simply to look at the flow. It wasn't to help them start up their business. It was to look at the flow of the floor where they were going to put all of this stuff. So we went in, and the more we looked at their flow or we looked at their space, we started realizing they had things that they didn't necessarily need. So we started applying lean techniques and concepts or process improvement concepts to everything. What we ended up figuring out after about 6 weeks was that they were overbuying and overhiring for what their projected demand was, plus 20% in the first 18 months. So we ended up cutting the equipment, right-sizing the staff, reducing the size of the building that they needed. We saved them $2.5 million in startup fees. They expected to spend 3.5. We took that down by 2.5. They only needed $1 million to start up for their first 12 months of operation. So when they had to write me a little $60,000 check for my consulting fees over 6 weeks, they didn't even blink an eye. With process improvement, the purpose of ours is to always find either the direct or indirect financial gains for an organization. We pay for ourselves when we do it well. That's why the credential becomes so powerful. Same thing with change management, because the only way to get an organization to accept change of a process is to remove resistance. Project management. Somebody's got to manage that framework. There's always going to be paperwork. There's always going to be some kind of an iteration or a discussion or a briefing or whatever it is. Project management fills that space up too. So I want to talk about the benefits that you have for a few minutes before you get out, before you transition. Most everybody, there is a cool program, but depending on which branch of service that you're in and how long you have left, this is probably getting to be pretty limited in your space, right? Army and Air Force, they were the largest programs for a while. Neither of them allow officers to use credentialing assistance anymore. So it is limited to enlisted and warrant officers. You also have to use it within a certain time period of getting out. So for the Air Force, if you're in the window of 120 days of transition, unfortunately, you can't use it. For the Army, it's now 60 days in that window. But if you're still a year out, year and a half, 2 years out, I would recommend looking into the credentialing assistance program to pay for some of these credentials. And I'm going to give you my phone number here at the end where I can help you talk about those. Coast Guard has a good program, fluctuates a little bit. I don't understand that one as well, but it has a program for credentialing assistance, which is your credentials, and tuition assistance, separated a little bit. Space Force falls under the Air Force's program. For the Navy and the Marines, unfortunately, there is no training money. You can only take exams, right? So it doesn't really help in terms of paying for the course. What does come into play, though, is GI Bill, right? Now, there are only a few companies that are able to accept your GI Bill for training. Lean Alaska is one of them. Post 9/11 GI Bill, taking your black belt is 2 months of your benefit. You get 36 months. The roadmap to that is limitless. Yes, 36 months towards a degree is beneficial, but also ask yourself, where are you at in your degree path? If you are halfway through your bachelor's, 2 months isn't going to hurt you. If you already have a bachelor's and you're working towards your MBA or your master's, they are typically only 12 to 24-month programs. 2 months isn't going to hurt you. The average veteran leaves 3 months of unused GI Bill benefit on the table after expiration of life or benefit, depending on when you transitioned. So I would tell you, I run into a lot. They're like, oh, no, I need to protect that. I need to protect that for something else. Balance your protection, right? Because that's going to help balance your transition. But post 9/11 is also very good program. Yes, you can use it while you're active. No, you don't have to wait till you get out. For all of you, you're on forever GI Bill, so there is no expiration to what those benefits are for you, your spouses, your dependents, whoever that may be. But there are funding programs to work through these certifications. So I want to take 5 minutes to tell you about Lean Alaska, and then I'm going to turn it over. As I mentioned, Lean Alaska was a side hustle in the beginning, became a business, but I created our training program the way that I wish I would have found, or what I would have found when I transitioned. So with Lean Alaska, you can read the screens, a lot of words is on there. But we are a lifetime training program, which means once you start training with us, you have lifetime access. You can take the course as many times as you need, over and over again, review it over and over. You have access to me or my staff for mentorship, for support. Don't know if you've met them yet or not, but we work close is probably not even an accurate description. Hand in hand with Monty from Lean Synergy Solutions. Our talent goes to him so he can find somewhere to put them. That's how much we believe in what we have. And that's why we have the lifetime access. All of our training is done on MS Teams. Don't even have to leave your house. We record every day in case the live interactions don't sync up with what your life requires or job requires. So you have those videos to watch, either to catch up or to review, whatever it takes. We are a certification program. We're not like PMP boot camps. PMP boot camps are great, but you still have to take a PMP exam after the boot camp. With Lean Alaska, when you're done, you are black belt certified. You are change management certified, whichever certification you're taking with us. We do not do project management professional. PMP and ACP, I leave that to my partners and phenomenal friends at Vets to PM. They are brilliant. They are brilliant. I send everybody to them for project management. They send people to me for Lean Six Sigma, right? We kind of have this shared agreement. For our program as well, as I mentioned, that results translation. Part of our program is developing a portfolio with you as you go through the course. Our course is not 150 question, multiple choice, true and false, proctored exam. Our exams are practical application. They're putting a tool together, or they're a scenario-based question. And our scenario-based questions are written as you would be interviewed. A question that you would see in an interview is how we ask our questions. We do that as kind of a preparation phase. But again, like I said, we're about practical application. So as you're working through the course, if you are focused on or doing a project or a process improvement on the side, we put that into a portfolio for you. And I literally mean a portfolio. We have binders that we send to you. As we start putting products in there, we will mail it to you and you'll have a digital copy. So when you're talking to a hiring manager and they're saying, hey, tell me your experience with Lean Six Sigma. Tell me your experience with quality management, with risk identification, with leadership and change management. Instead of just telling them things that you've done, you give them this portfolio that has an affidavit in there signed by a master black belt, right? Validating your results. That's what the portfolio is about. Validation of the things that you've done. Again, you stand out amongst a crowd. One of the things that we offer, we do have a spouse independence program. So people that take black belt with us, your spouse and your dependents can do our green belt course for free. Kind of our way of giving back to the community to kind of really capitalize on focusing on your family, not just the individuals within. So this slide here, that QR code at the bottom right, it does say GI Bill on it, but that QR code will take you to our website if you want to look around. Registration is insanely easy. Registration is insanely easy. Whether you're on the, if you want to use the GI Bill, you go to the GI Bill page. If you want to use some kind of cooler credentialing assistance, you just go to the training page for black belt. You can all navigate it through there. My phone number on the left, right? That phone number goes to this phone. If you have any questions, and your questions don't have to be limited to Lean Six Sigma. If you have questions about any credential, who's a good trainer, or what should I look for in a trainer? If you want to talk about transition, both good and bad stories, anything at all, please do not hesitate to send me a text, give me a call on that phone. There's my email address right below it. Come follow me on either LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm not as active as most, but I do go through my waves of active, when I'm not teaching and consulting. Yeah, that's a lot of words. I want to pause there and turn it over to comments, thoughts from anybody in the crowd.
I saw on the website you guys do Scrum too.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
What Scrum is or how our course is offered?
How the course is offered?
So yeah, Scrum is we do Scrum attached to our change management certification, largely because right now GI Bill nor CA will directly pay for Scrum. So we have everybody sign up for change management. The first 4 days are change management. The last 2.5 days or 2 days are the Scrum certification. Again, the Scrum course is focused on PSM1. It's based off of the test that you would take on scrum.org, PSM1 certified. But again, 2-day course that goes through the foundation, not only the foundation of being a Scrum master and how product backlogs transition to sprint backlogs and how time boxes work. I do a lot of connection. When we teach, everything gets connected back to the military. So for instance, familiar or not with Scrum, probably have already been a part of it. Who's familiar with what an IPR is, or an in-progress review, right? Ever been to an IPR in your military career, or some kind of a briefing as to how things are going, right? That's a sprint review. Anybody ever done an AAR, an after action review? That's a sprint retrospective, right? So we spend a lot of time linking the things that you've done in service to what the Scrum structure is. But at the end of those 2 days, it preps you for that PSM1 exam. Is that kind of what you're looking for, or did I miss the mark?
Yeah, no, that's good. I really appreciate you kind of walking me through that a little bit.
Absolutely. Matthew, I see your hand up there.
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. Thanks for taking my question. So I was looking on the Lean Alaska website about some of the training opportunities, and so I was just interested in uh, learning more about like the virtual training opportunities, like maybe share some insight on how like leading a project or participating in a project for like the Lean Six Sigma could be done virtually.
So a great thing about process improvement and technology is we don't always have to be in the same space. So if we're talking about mentorship of a project, you would be doing, let's say man, there's so many different ways to shape this. Matthew, what I would tell you is, man, I'm going to hit this quick, but please send me a follow-up message because this could be easily a half an hour to 45-minute conversation. I would be happy to walk you through a myriad of ways that this works. Um, One example would be you doing a project in your space with the mentorship of you and I getting together in that virtual space. We also have a lot of programs, like I use Lucid a lot as a way for us to create products in a virtual space where you can even bring your team in to do that as well. Like me for consulting, I'd say 10% of my clients are somebody that I can drive to. The other 90% are those that I consult virtually to do projects. And it's because we are advising them, we are assisting them. I'm not physically doing the work for them. We're guiding them through the process and the changes and the improvements from a distance. So, I mean, that's a very abbreviated version of how it works. But Matthew, I'd love to hop on to another call and explain more.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Dwayne, I think this puts them in order.
Hey Phil, thanks for coming out today and presenting to us. I have my questions are, well, two. One for the Lean Six Sigma. I know you need your green belt, yellow belt, then black belt. That's usually how it goes. Would the black belt course then uh, cover getting obtaining the green belt and yellow belt, or
Yeah, so let me hit that real quick. So, and I should have covered that earlier, and I'm so glad you said that. Organizations that tell you that you have to go white, yellow, green, and black, that's a really good marketing scheme because then you have to keep going back and paying for more certifications. At the end of the day, black belt is nothing but a combination of the belts below. So, like our course, you can go directly to black belt. There are no prerequisites. When you sign up, I have a pre recorded white belt that I give to you so you can watch it at your own pace, your own time, kind of get your feet wet on it. It's not a requirement, but some people just kind of like to ease into it. But day one of our black belt course, we start off on what is lean, what is Six Sigma, what are the basic definitions. And over the 4 weeks that we're together throughout the course and the videos, we build up to the black belt level, right? So you don't have to go like, well, more often than not, somebody will take green belt and you'll feel like you only got half the story because green belt is nothing more than an abridged version of black belt, right? So you just kind of feel like at the end, you're like, oh, where's the rest of the story at? So there are programs that do require that. Our program is like ASQ. It's like the DoD's program. There are no prerequisites. You sign up for black belt. We train you from zero up to the black belt. Hopefully that helps out,
okay.
Dwayne.
Yeah, that's a good answer. The other question I have, if I wanted to take like the Lean Six Sigma and the change management, like what am I looking at for as far as the use of my GI Bill?
So black belt will take 2 months of your GI Bill, and then the change management Scrum collectively, those two certifications only take 1 month. So
Okay,
all three certifications, 3 months of benefits.
copy. Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris.
Hey Phil, thanks for coming on. All good information. This is my jam, I'd have to say, because I'm really gravitating towards all this for my
Mhm.
career. Um, I just have one question. A couple years ago, I did a greenbelt course through the Air Force where we went
Uh,
through the entire process and
Excellent
everything.
course. Yeah.
So we did get a certificate,
Mhm.
but I don't think that makes me certified. It just makes me like a practitioner, I guess. Is that
So
true?
kind of the Air Force has a really good program. The problem is industry doesn't understand Air Force's program very well. Unfortunately, like ASQ doesn't have it on the website like we're affiliated with the US Air Force. I would tell you that program is a great program to have. What it does do for you though, Chris, is it allows you to have the conversation. If you find your way into an interview, the Air Force program does you well to set up to speak from that level. Um, So it is a certification. It is as certified as anything else. It's just how it's viewed in industry, because industry looks for those affiliations with like ASQ and all those. Like if you go to ASQ's website, you'll find Lean Alaska as an affiliation. You won't see US Air Force. Doesn't mean the program isn't good. So what we offer, building on that, and like we do a lot of training with the Air Force because they stop at green, we take them to black, and then we fill in the blanks for that. Chris, hopefully that helps out, but it's not bad to have. It's better than having nothing.
Yeah, that helps. Just another quick question. So I guess going to black belt through your company would probably be a
Mhm.
good move, though.
It would help again because Lean Alaska's affiliation. So when you're black belt certified through us, you have that ASQ a designation, the ISSE designation. But what I would tell you is having the green belt, you're going to be a lot further than most that join because you already have that base context. And usually with the Air Force guys that have and gals that have been through green belt, we can start building your portfolio really, really early because you've already been kind of working in that space while you're in the Air Force. So in addition to that little bit of extra training, just like that Sergeant Major I said, you're probably already doing black belt stuff. You just don't have the piece of paper to show it. So in our program, I tend to focus with my Air Force folks that have been through the green belt on a little bit different of a path to kind of capitalize on what you've already done.
No, that's good. That's great information. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon.
Hey, can you hear me all right? Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, so my question pertains to primarily funding.
Mhm.
'Cause my GI Bill currently is transferred to my daughter,
Yeah.
and I have 3 months left in the Navy, and I don't know if cool is a viable option for me because I gotta look up the regulation again, but I'm pretty sure I don't have enough time left in service to use cool. Is there any
Yeah.
other alternative funding to that, or?
So Navy does not allow the training for cool. Unfortunately, Navy and Marines can't use cool to take training for anything, and they
Yeah.
only pay for the exam. So you're kind of limited in that space. Um, VRNE is an option. I'm not VRNE is my gray space. We're able to accept it, but the criteria seems to change by case manager.
Yeah.
But that is an option. GI Bill is kind of still an option. Do you know what your disability rating is on your way out?
Not yet. I'm still waiting on all my exams.
So when you get your disability rating, one of the things, if you're not for anybody, if you're not familiar with what the DEA is, the Chapter 35, it is 36 months of entitlement for your dependents and your spouse. So if you're qualifying for the Chapter 35, a lot of people, what they'll do is they will recover some of their GI Bill that they had already transferred out. So like me, for example, I had transferred my GI Bill to my kids. Once I knew that they qualified for Chapter 35, both of my daughters took their bachelor's degree for free using Chapter 35, and then I recovered some of the GI Bill to use some of it for my credentialing on the way out because I wasn't taking away. It was just they qualified for a different program. There's a lot of different nuances. And again, I would offer the same thing. Give me a call after this is over. Send me an email, a text, send a dog sled up here, whatever you got. Because there are different paths, but it's like they're really these narrow, little paths to follow. But I can talk through a few of those options with you, whether it's for my courses or anything.
Yeah, you raised a good point about potentially trying to recover GI Bill after I get my VA rating. Because if I somehow manage to get 100%, then I can recover as much as I want, right?
Right. Yeah. And here's the other one as well. If you were in prior to 2009, if you paid in 12 months to the Montgomery GI Bill when you joined and you have not applied for your Rudisill amendment review, you need to do that. Again, that's on our website as well. If you go to the GI Bill page on our website, all the way at the bottom, it talks about the Rudisill amendment. If you paid into that GI Bill for 12 months, there's a good chance that you will be able to recover that 12 months. Now, you can't use that 12 months under the Rudisill to pay for credentialing. But again, now you have 36 months of post 9/11, 12 months of Rudisill. Depending on how you balance that, you could recover some of that for use. Like I said, there's a lot of options here. There's a lot of things out there. So give me a call.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. James,
Hey, Phil, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, first of all, thank you for, damn it. Sorry for giving me that
No, you're good.
one ring. Hey, first of all, thank you for that wonderful course. It's been very intriguing. I already have my green belt. I use my cool money, and I got it out of the IASSC certification. And I have to admit that was one of the most hardest tests to take, especially on the Six Sigma part with all the
Yeah.
statistics. Now, my question to you is, when it comes to re-upping, recertifying, according to the IASSC, to recertify, I have to repass the test, and that's something I never want to do in my life.
Yeah, it's actually much worse than that because IASSC doesn't exist anymore. They were bought out by PeopleCert about 4 years ago.
Yep.
Recertification exams like that are horrible. Man, I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
And
But
mine was People Cert. It says People Cert.
okay, PeopleCert, good. Yeah, so
IASSC.
you
I
did.
I have it on
Yeah.
there. And
So
then
I would tell you that we're partnered with PeopleCert, but that again is a much of a money grab. You don't need to have a course like that. Like our certifications are lifetime certifications. You, even if you don't come through our course, I would tell you that you don't really necessarily need to recertify. When a lot of the hiring managers are looking in that, they're not seeing if your certification is active. What they're seeing is that you went through it and that you can talk about it. Again, they want to know, how do you understand the green belt side of the house? So do not rush out and retake that insanely painful exam.
no, it's still valid until first of all, thank you for that answer and that
Yeah.
clarity. Yeah, it's still valid until I want to say December of 26
Sure.
for the 3 years. But that was my only questions because with PMI, I have a ACP, and they cover a little bit of the lean. A lot of the times, if you just knock out the professional development units, that's how you get recertify on those. But I
Yeah.
just wasn't sure about the Lean Six Sigma.
Yeah, PeopleCert does not have PDUs like PMI does at all.
Well, greatly
Unfortunately.
appreciate that information. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to jump. I've got 5 minutes to another one. I wanted to thank everybody for hanging out with me. Like I said, there's my phone number, my email address. Please reach out. Tyler, I know, is amazing, and he's going to ask anyway. If anybody is interested in more information, attending the course, getting signed up for GI Bill, what's the roadmap to attend? Let him know, and he will put you in contact with me. If your name comes across, I will reach out to you individually. I'm not going to put you in some blanket email. I'll send you an email. I'll send you a text, and we'll figure it out, and we'll get you all sorted out. Even if it's questions beyond training or certification. But thank you so much, Tyler. Thanks for having me, brother. I know you're out there in virtual world somewhere.
Oklahoma, but hey, I'm gonna keep spending every day trying to be half as cool as Phil. So
That's
thank
not
you
hard.
so much. Thank you so much for being here, brother. I really appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody have a good one.
All right, everybody, that wraps up the training for today. Thank you so much for your attentiveness and engagement with our speakers that are so gracious to dedicate their time to be with us throughout the day. I appreciate that. And if you're a 7 Eagle student, please make sure that you knock out your end of